What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of the Fierce Framework, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating our confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm a self diagnosed ADHD entrepreneur with a vision to see more women break out of the mold society tells us we're supposed to fit into and start living lives that we're excited about. My goal is to help other neurospicy entrepreneurs work sustainability and individuality into your business so that your business works for you and supports a life that lights you up. So I hope you find encouragement and inspiration in these episodes. Let's get into it. What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Let's talk about the power of checking in. So, last time we talked about some strategies that I like to use when you have a goal that you want to get to, but you're really struggling to do the steps required to get to that goal. Like when you're struggling to actually do the work to get you where you want to go. And we talked about like checking in with yourself and asking yourself, like, okay, what do I need? Like, what's going on? Is there something in the way that I can kind of remedy? Or, right? What do I need to like incentivize me or make it more fun or um, make me want to do it? What's the word? Whatever. Make it more fun or like enjoyable or just easier. So that was all last time, and I wanted to kind of dig a little bit more into the power of checking in. And I do want to reiterate how important I think it is to be gentle with yourself. I know a lot of us were, oh, berated seems extreme, but also it seems not wrong. So, I think a lot of us were told repeatedly that we were lazy and we just need to try harder. And it's like, oh, if you would just apply yourself, or like, you have no problem doing XYZ and focusing on that for hours. So I don't know why you won't just focus on your homework or like whatever, whatever, right? And so we've already received that like negative, hurtful, tear yourself down messaging so much. And I think that if you're here, you're probably on a little bit of like a healing growth journey. So I know I am. So definitely part of that for me has been working on just the way I talk to myself and the way I treat myself and just being more gentle with myself. So I like to approach it as straight up like, what's going on, bud? Like, I've done this when I realize it's come up actually with journaling recently, which is such a bummer. But I've been going through The Artist's Way, and one of the like homework things, one of the requirements there is to do morning pages, which is 3 pages, handwritten front and back. Takes me for fucking ever, but that's part of it. And I have noticed sometimes like the goal is always to just like bust it out and get it over with, right? So it's not like dragged out forever. But there were some times a couple weeks ago when I was struggling. And then I would like get on my phone and scroll TikTok and I was like, I've been scrolling for an hour, like trying to avoid doing my morning pages, and they could have been done, right? Like, what is going on here? And so taking a step back instead of just like beating myself, trying to like truly check in and really ask, like, hey, buddy, what's going on? What are you doing? Like what is the block here? What are you hiding from? What are you running from? What are you trying to avoid? What is it about these pages that you're like worried about or is causing you discomfort, or like really what is going on? And so part of being gentle with myself is basically like gentle parenting myself and really just approaching what's going on with me with curiosity. And so I'll legit like in kind of, a little like sing-song tone, be like, what's going on, bud? Just like ask myself, like, okay, well, that's wow. Especially when it's something like I usually don't have a problem with, or maybe that I've been in a good like routine with, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we just really don't want to drink water today. Like, okay, that's okay. What's going on? Like, how can we fix it? And it's silly for me, but like it's been so helpful for me is I legit go, that's okay. That is, I tell myself that all the time. Be like, all right, well, having a really hard time with none of that, and that's okay. What's going on? And it sounds so juvenile, which it is. right? Because a lot of us, like, our trauma is from when we were children. And I'm not like a psychologist, so I'm just like, I don't know, bear with me. Take it with a grain of salt. But it's like your trauma is from when you're a child, right? So a lot of that damage is from when you were a kid. So when you're like reparenting yourself and you're gentle parenting yourself, it is like you're talking to a kid because you're kind of like talking to that kid version of yourself. And so it's been really helpful for me to be like, that's okay, to know that like I'm not trying to fix you because you're a problem. I am trying to help you be able to do the things that you want to do. And so like that might look different for you. Maybe that's okay, it doesn't work for you. But I've actually been saying that to myself a lot. Like, okay, I'm noticing that I'm avoiding XYZ. That's okay. What's going on? What do you need? What is causing you to avoid that? So, like validating myself has really helped me kind of move past like the shame and um mostly shame, right? That makes me want to hide and shut down. And so it's like, that's okay. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna partner with like the kid version of myself or the version of myself that's running away from this and avoiding this, and the like mature or maybe ideal version or my favorite version of myself or the person I'm aspiring to be. I'm taking that part of myself and kind of partnering with the part of myself that's avoiding the work my aspirational self wants to be doing. And I'm like partnering those two parts of myself. And it's like together we're going to figure out how we can move to the next step and how we can get through this. So pausing, right? Noticing something's going on. Like, usually I journal and it's like I bang it out like na na na, but I've noticed that like I'm avoiding it or I've been on this phone for like 30 minutes now. Like what are we doing? What's going on? So allowing yourself to pause kind of gives space for that check-in. Because if we're pushing through, like we don't even notice things a lot of the time until it's kind of further down the road. So when you're like giving yourself space to be present, it's easier to notice as you're going. So whether you're able to do that and you kind of have the capacity to build in these like pauses and breaks throughout your day, or if it's something that's not as natural and there's not maybe not as much like space, you put in a reminder or you put in a check-in or maybe you check in with yourself during lunch or you check in with yourself after work or like whatever it is, right? But checking in with yourself is so powerful because that is what creates the opportunity to then dig into noticing if something is going on, what's going on, and then really digging into like, what is this block and what do I need? What do I need to move past this block and to get through this situation so I can get where I'm trying to go? And sometimes there's something in the way, right? So it's like, is there something in the way that maybe you can move or break it down into a smaller thing, or maybe somebody else can help you with it, or maybe somebody else can do part of it for you, or maybe somebody can like coach you through it, right? So if it's something that maybe it's a block and you just you feel like you can't do it, or it's just really a struggle for you, or even not, you just want help, right? Maybe a coach, right? Or a friend who can sit with you while you do it. Sometimes like co-working or mirroring or what's the word for it? Um, but like having somebody else there while you're working can be really helpful for a lot of neurodivergent people. I wish I could remember the official name, sorry. But like a coach to help you navigate through something or like guide you through something, right? Or even like a mentor, somebody who's been there before, or maybe even a peer who's a little bit more experienced or confident in that area. Like who can help you get through that block. And then also one of the things that I've realized that I was doing sometimes is I would be frustrated and feeling stuck and not being able to take the next step. But when I took a second, I realized my next step actually wasn't the next step for me. It was further down the road, but it was like where I wanted to be, or maybe where I thought I should be. right? So this isn't a great example, but just like help illustrate, say your social media followers are 10 and you want 1,000. So you can have that in your head of like, this is a bad example because like you could just aim for 1,000. But like you could have it in your head of like, okay, 1,000 is my next step. I need to go from 10 to 1,000. Why does that feel like such a big disconnect? Why am I having such a hard time getting there? Like it's such a block, it's so overwhelming. Like, but I need to like get to this 1,000 and you feel like you're spinning your tires. Maybe a better next step for you at 10 is 100 followers, or maybe 20 followers, or maybe 11 followers, right? So, one thing that was powerful for me is realizing what I was doing, and I was aiming for a next step that was actually like 5 steps from where I was. Maybe it was a next step for one of my somebody in my like accountability group. Words are hard, guys. Maybe it was the next step for somebody in my accountability group, the next step that like I thought it was supposed to be or that I wanted it to be or like whatever, whatever. But when I actually realized where I was and I looked around and located myself on the map of my journey, right? And it was like, oh, I'm actually here at 10 followers. So my next step is 100, not 1,000. Okay, so now, how am I going to get to 100 followers? Because that's taking into account where I am currently and then considering what actually is the next step there. One of the analogies that I'm actually super proud of is I came up with this super early on and I'm stoked about it is like rock climbing, right? Which is hilarious because I don't rock climb. But if you're on a rock climbing wall, right, and you can see maybe like a perfect handhold, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful, it's purple, it's whatever, it's perfect. Like that's the handhold I want. It looks so good, and that's where I want to be. And so like that's my next move. But if it's literally out of your reach, it is not your next step. You have to grab something in your reach so that you can get to that ideal place, that ideal handhold, that ideal next step. But that's not the next step. We have to consider where we are on the rock wall, and we have to take into account where we are in relation and then what is within reach. What is the next step in relation to where we actually are? So we can't just, I mean, not to be like too strict, but you can't just like make up next steps, right? You have to consider where you are and what is, I hate saying realistic because I feel like people use realistic to limit people, but what is sustainable for you, considering where you are, what you can actually do next. So I love the Rockwell example because I feel like it's a visual, like what you can literally reach next. And so maybe you can't reach the purple, and maybe it's beautiful and a perfect handhold, but maybe you need to hit the green one first, and then the green one's gonna help you get to the purple, right? Like you're gonna get there. You're gonna get there. Don't give up on your dreams and take into account where you are now, and so that that can help inform what actually really is the next step for me. Like, what is the next step? The next little baby step. Okay. And that has been really powerful for me of, do I know where I am in this process? Am I being aware of where I am in the map of my journey so that I can use that information to inform, okay, what actually is a next step for me? Or especially like a next baby step. What is doable for me, where I actually am right now, and who I am right now? Not who I think I should be, not who I wish I was, not who I aspire to be, who I actually am right now. Right? It's kind of like couch to 5K. If you are not a runner, then you want to start with where you're at, the couch, and then you build from there. If you're already a runner, then you probably don't need couch to 5K. Maybe you need 5K to marathon training. So, taking into consideration who you are and where you are and allowing yourself to accept that will enable you to be so much more strategic when you're figuring out what your next move is going to be, because it's going to be from the reality of where you currently are. Okay. And then asking, how can you give yourself what you need? Okay, so the things I mentioned above, just asking like, is there something in the way that you can, tackle or move out of the way or get help getting over or through or have somebody else, kind of give you a boost by doing a part of it or delegating it or breaking it down into smaller steps. And then also a couple pieces that have been really helpful for me. I feel like this is kind of niche, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's like sometimes you need input, like you need inspiration. Sometimes like your and Julia Cameron, I'm doing the artist way, and she is the author of the artist way. She talks about filling your well, like for creativity, of just kind of like creative thoughts and ideas and concepts and like feeding yourself and filling your well so that you have something to draw from when it's time to put out into the world. And this can be definitely recommend taking that with a grain of salt because we can totally get take it too far, right? And then we're just consuming, 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 and then when it's time for us to actually create, we're just like so waterlogged with everybody else's thoughts and ideas that like we can't even articulate our own. So I'm not saying this is what you should be doing 24/7, right? But it's a consideration when it's like, what's going on? Why am I stuck? What do I need? Sometimes you need inspiration, input, creative ideas. And some of those things that can be helpful are play. Are you doing things that are fun? Are you having a good time? Are you enjoying the world? Like, and I mentioned before, like, I'm not the best at play, but I know that it's good for us. There is a literally research on it. It helps us learn, it helps us grow, it helps us be more creative. Like, play is important. So sometimes when you need some, like, you need input, you need more in you, you need to be like fed, then maybe you need more play, right? Maybe you need more beauty. Maybe you need to spend more time in nature and like observe the beauty and the world and how things are actually designed instead of the cubicles of corporate America, right? Um, I mean, sometimes you just need like a break from routine or just more. And this even happens to me sometimes. I'm a homebody. I love being alone in my house. I'm a huge fan. And then sometimes I realize like man, you actually need to get out there in the world and just see the people. You need, I want to be where the people are. Sometimes that little like creative or the little inner child is like, I want to be where the people are. Like, let's get out of this house. So I hate to say this. I hate to be recorded saying this, but sometimes you do need to leave the house and get a change of scenery and have some input from other humans and be like, okay, maybe there's a little change in perspective or a little input or something you observe that just kind of helps like spark that creativity or bring kind of breathes new life into whatever it is that you've been hung up on. And then on the other side of like adding input, sometimes you need to take away and sometimes you need rest. I think a lot of the time we need rest. So many people I know are just like run so ragged. And that used to be me. I'm not judging. Um, but it's so normalized actually to where I have done, oh God, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I have done so much work to take so much off my plate so that I have more like capacity and space and time to like rest and not do things. Because I used to be go, 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 and my schedule was always packed and I was always like booked and busy and just running, running, running. And I never had time to like stop and feel a feeling or really like check in and see what was going on with me. And that is so normalized. I felt normal when I was doing that. And now that I've intentionally slowed down and pared back a lot, I still often fall into the travel like comparison and be like, oh my gosh, she's doing so many things. Should I be doing more? I should be doing more, huh? Like, oh my gosh, look at her. She's a mom and has a business and is doing this and is like, oh man, she's doing all these things. Like, point being, it is so normal to be doing all the things and to be so busy and to need rest. So I am not throwing any shade. I feel like this is one thing that I made really significant progress on, and I'm really grateful for that for myself that I had the privilege and opportunity to do that. but I am not turning around and judging you for being in a place where you're busy, busy, busy. Okay? Because that was me not that long ago. And it is totally a normal part of our culture. So, no judgment. And I want us to be aware that that's a really big thing that a lot of us struggle with, right? I'm just not having time to freaking breathe. And so it's like, yeah, if you don't have a chance, this whole point of checking in with yourself, the whole topic of this podcast hinges upon having the chance to take a pause, take a breath, and take the time to check in with yourself, right? So if you don't have any time to rest, you're all of this is moot, right? And that's part of why a lot of us get to where we're at because we don't have time to check in with ourselves. And so we don't notice what's going on until something gets so bad that we can't ignore it anymore. So that is also part of why being intentional about checking in with yourself and asking yourself, like, what is going on can be really important because it can help prevent things from getting worse because you're handling it and addressing it while it's a smaller issue before it becomes this big thing that's going to cause you to have to your life to come to a screeching halt, right? People realize like when people have health problems because they've been so stressed and so overwhelmed for so many years, then it's like all of a sudden they have a heart attack and their life comes to a screeching halt and it's like your body made you rest. And like that's actually like a heart attack is terrible, but it's actually like, kind of cool that like our bodies have that kind of I don't want to say like fail safe because that is a damaging event, right? It's not like just a warning flag. But I mean, it's better than just not doing anything and just like passing away, right? Like, I don't know, this is tragic to talk about, and I hate that like that was the example that came into my head. But but even that, right? Like our bodies have these built-in things to like try to get our attention. And so we can support ourselves so much by being intentional about taking the time to check in with ourselves and see like how we're doing, how am I doing, what do I need? And so we talked about how sometimes that's inspiration and sometimes it's rest. Maybe you need to take something off the to-do list. Maybe you just need to let that fall and just not do it. Or maybe you need to delegate it, right? And have somebody else do it, or somebody else own it, or pay somebody to do it, or have one of the kids do it, or whatever that is. Maybe you need to delegate to that whatever that thing is to someone on your team, or somebody who'd be better at it, or someone who just has more capacity. Just take stuff off your plate, and sometimes you can just nix it all together, and sometimes it needs to be handled, but it doesn't need to be handled by you, right? And both of those are super viable because that clears up more capacity for you. One of the things that has helped me once something's on my to-do list, I have a hard time taking it off. But I have noticed I have no problem pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. And so one of the things I've been working on when I check in with myself is noticing, am I pushing off the same thing over and over and over? And there were a couple things when I did that. I was like pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off. And I finally like sat down and I was like, I've been pushing this off for like a month. Is this still a priority? Like, is this still something I want to do? Is this still something that needs to be on my to-do list that I need to get myself in the right headspace to do? Or is this like not it? Because obviously some part of me doesn't want to do it, but is that like my favorite part of me? Like my aspirational part of me, the person I want to be, right? Or is this like person I'm growing out of? Are they the one who doesn't want to do this? And that can be an important distinction, right? But sometimes when you're putting something off, putting something off, putting something off, putting something off, it's worth it to take a second and just like look at that thing like, do I actually want this? And sometimes it's no, and you're like, okay, cool. And I just deleted the task off my list, and I was like, wow, I don't have to keep pushing this back for another month. I'm just done with it. Amazing. I put it on the to-do list, and then I decided it's off the to-do list. You're actually allowed to do that. No one died. The world kept spinning. It was crazy. It felt illegal, but no one's thrown me in jail yet. Not for that, at least. So, and lastly, I want to talk about take a break, but don't quit. I think taking a break can be really hard because I think a lot of the time, and I know for me specifically, I was afraid for the longest time if I slowed down or if I stopped for a while that I would never start again. And I think that for me was like a sign of burnout. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know if it always is, right? But for me, it was like, yeah, bro. Like I went by the time I was in that space and I was like so worried if I stopped for a second that I would never start again, I was burned out. Super. So the way I handled that is again, you have to believe that you're allowed to rest. So that's like step one, right? Reminding yourself you're allowed to rest. You don't have to earn it. Humans need rest. You're not a robot. So because you're human, you get to rest. And that's just part of what you need to survive. So you're allowed to rest. And then checking in with yourself, which is what we're talking about this whole episode, but like asking, is this a tough day or is this a tough season? Right? So sometimes I'll have just an off day and maybe I had a full agenda of like stuff to do and tasks on my calendar and I planned on doing all this stuff. And then as I'm like going through my morning, I'm like, today is not the day, bro. Like I just don't have it. Maybe you're like weepy or maybe you're just like head is foggy or like whatever it is and you're just like, I don't have it today. And under this umbrella, right, of us like being gentle with ourselves and working with ourselves, and maybe like when there's space to wait until maybe you're in a right headspace, or you're kind of in the right energy to like do things the best or like kind of more in flow, right? So a lot of the times when we're having, if that's like our goal and we're wanting to be sustainable and we're hoping to be able to do things in the time that they're aligned with our energy, right? It is so much harder for me to force myself to record a podcast episode when I'm just not feeling it. But if I'm in the right headspace, I can record a couple in the same day. And it's like, okay, amazing. And like they come out better and it's just easier and it's like things flow, right? So I think that's ideal of to be able to do things when you're in like the headspace or the energy that's conducive to that, where you're closer to like a flow state. And so if like that is what you're working towards, then those off days can be really rough, right? You're like, oh, I was planning on doing all this stuff, but I don't want to like I don't really force myself to do things anymore. So like I don't want to force it. Or maybe it's like you have a bare minimum that you have to do, but all the extra, the icing on the cake, all the nice to haves, you're able to give yourself permission to be like, I'm just not going to do those today because today's like a rough day, you know? And I think it's important to have the distinction because if it's like, if you spend all day in bed for a day, like, yeah, life out, and sometimes you're tired, bro. Sometimes you're tired, okay? And you're just gonna be in bed most of the day, okay? And you're allowed to have a rough day. We have rough days, okay? The power of the check in is if you're having a lot of rough days in a row, you can spend a day in bed. If you're spending a week in bed, you might need some support, right? Might need a call in backup. We might need something else than what you have capacity to do right now. Okay. And so that's why the check in is so important, is because it's like we need to distinguish, or at least for me, it's been helpful for me to distinguish, am I having a tough day? Because if I am, clear my schedule, Susan, right? Today we're doing the bare minimum. We're just going to get through it and we're going to be gentle with ourselves. And my focus is to nourish, hydrate, and rest, right? And like that's what I'm doing today. Okay. And I can do that for a day, depending on the day, right? And how much you have, obligate like responsibilities to other people and whatnot. But usually, like you can get away with that for a day. Fine. No big deal. You're allowed to have rough days. However, if this is going on for a week, a season, a longer period of time, then it's like, okay, now I need a new strategy because I can't just keep clearing my schedule every day for weeks and weeks. And so when you're checking in, that's part of checking in with yourself. Like, okay, is this a temporary thing where I can just be gentle with myself and rest a little bit extra and move on? It's like, is this a cold and I just need to like rest and recover? Or is this a chronic illness and I need to figure out more of a long-term strategy and how I'm actually going to approach this for a significant period of time? Lastly, if you're one of those people like I was, where you're worried about taking a break and you're worried about resting or stopping for a little bit because you're worried that you won't start again, you can put a calendar reminder. You can set a deadline for yourself. Sometimes, because I think it can be hard for us to determine because it's like life is always busy and life is going to be hard, right? So if it's like, if I take a break from writing my book, because this is a really busy season, everything is busy, especially like moms with kids, right? Like it's always busy. And so then you kind of get into that tension of like, there's never the perfect time. And so it's like might as well just do it now because there's never going to be the right time. But this is different because I'm talking from the perspective of like you're already doing it and you're taking a break, right? So you know that you were able to do the thing because you've been doing it, but now you're needing a break because something is going on, right? Maybe something you're grieving and you have less capacity, or maybe there's more that you have to deal with. Maybe there's, more emotional labor going on. Maybe it's like a relational tension, right? That's taking a lot of energy. Or maybe your kids are literally more busy this year than they were last year. Like whatever it is, being able to identify that. I mean, okay, I need to take a break and I have an idea of how long this season is going to be. Or I don't, but I'm going to set a deadline to check in again. Or I do, and I'm going to set a deadline of like, okay, I'm going to restart by XYZ date. You can do a calendar reminder. You can schedule an email to go out to um, your audience, right? Announcing something that you're doing or announcing that you're coming back, right? If that like kind of social pressure is going to help you, you can ask someone to keep you accountable. Like you can put things in place to encourage you to come back so that when you're having that rest and you're kind of clocked out for a while, you can fully clock out and disengage for that time because you've set up like an external reminder to remind you to come back to it. That was something that was really helpful for me, and so I hope it's really helpful for you. To recap kind of what we're talking about basically the power of checking in, right? We got to know where we're at to be able to figure out what we need and to give ourselves those things the best way that we can. And so, literally identifying the block. What's going on, bud? What do you need? Asking those questions and figuring out what it is, where the disconnect is, and what you need so that then you can address it either, calling in help or changing a strategy or whatever it is. And then how can you give yourself what you need? Right. So again, is that bringing in help? Is that getting inspiration from somewhere? Is that giving yourself more rest, taking something off your plate? And then you can take a break. You can always take a break. You deserve rest, but don't quit. If it's something you want to come back to and you just need a break, give yourself that break, a real break, and then put something in place if you're worried to remind you to come back and get back at it. All right. I think you're doing so great. Thank you so much for being here with me. I appreciate you listening. And I always love to hear from you. So if you want to hit me up on social media, I'm at the F.I.E.R.C.E Framework. I'll also include a link if you want to join my email list just to make sure that you're getting my little love letters on Saturday morning and all the reminders for the podcast. Or if you want to just shoot me an email, it's confidence@thefierceframework.net. I will talk to you so soon. Until then, keep becoming fierce.